After 7 years almost, The Mandalorian and Grogu is here to bring Star Wars back to theaters. Is it good, or is it bad, or is it just kind of somewhere in between, like a lot of Star Wars movies fall? We'll discuss that this week on Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. Welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam. This is, since we've started the show, the first new release of a movie. As you know, we tend to cover Star Wars on this show. We do books, we do TV shows, we do the old movies. We have yet to get a new release since we've started the show. And we have covered Star Wars in the past on Beware of Spoilers. One of the first things we did was The Force Awakens. And here we are with, this new one. Now, what we're here to talk about is The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is, as I said in the intro, the first Star Wars movie since the Rise of Skywalker. It was, it's a continuation of The Mandalorian from Disney+, the TV show that launched to some solid fanfare, but people did kind of fall off with it after a certain point. And I think part of that comes from the fact that Disney didn't exactly handle this properly. One of the things that's kind of the big complaint with a lot of streaming is that it takes too long between seasons for anything to materialize. And when that's the case, people will fall behind in caring about the characters. Like, oh, okay, well, it was 2 years or 3 years between seasons of Andor, and it's like, look, I gotta rewatch Andor now to kind of remember where we were in this. There's a lot going on. A lot of things came out between now and then, and it does inevitably harm what happened. We had 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, plus 1 season of Book of Boba Fett, between 2019, because it came out in October of 2019, and 2026, where now we have the movie. And it's not a ton of TV to watch, but it is a ton of, it's a lot to expect people to remember over the course of 7 years. The sirens are on my end because there's an ambulance trying to get through very loudly. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think they were going to be inherently dealing with a bit of an issue with this, it's an uphill battle to get people to go to a theater to watch what they can watch at home. And this is a thought that I had as I was watching this movie. I think the big mistake that Disney made with Disney Plus was sell it as an equivalent experience to going to the theater. Because I'm watching this movie, and it's fine, it's 3 stars on how we would review a movie, and as I'm watching it, my first thought is, there's nothing about this that necessarily screams it would have had to have been a theatrical release. It's not like I'm like, oh, this is clearly shot for IMAX, or the visuals are so much better. It's just kind of okay. And that's kind of a problem when you have a movie like this, where it's like, if you're going to try to get people to go out to theaters, you have to give them a reason to. And fundamentally, this movie doesn't really do that. It feels like an overlong episode of the show. And if this was something that they put on in Disney Plus, that's fine. But we have to take into consideration, the fact that, we may not get more of this. And look, if this is going to be an overlong episode, there's a point in this at about the hour mark where there's a weird cut, and I'm like, oh, so here's the dividing line between episodes. It's such a weirdly placed cut. Why did they do that? And it's like, oh, because clearly this could have been 2 episodes, and that kind of is my fundamental issue with this. The movie does not, does not set itself in a place where it feels like anything more than what it should be. The stakes don't feel higher. At no point do I feel like this movie is anything more than what it was there. It could have been, like, the way I describe it is it feels like a 2-part episode in the middle of season 3 of this show. It's not meant to be, you know, it doesn't feel like anything more than that or anything, you know, ridiculously, you know, over the top new. It's just kind of, you know, it's there. But with the plot being, you know, they're gonna go help hunt down Imperial warlords, and then they're gonna go and you know hang out until the Hutts turn on them. It's like cool, but again, there's nothing about this that really screams, you know, you have to see this in a movie theater. It really does feel like, especially considering like the connections to the expanded universe of Star Wars are connections to the Clone Wars show and Rebels. It really does feel like it doesn't really like belong in a theatrical release, and that's kind of a problem. If you're going to try and pitch people to go see this movie, you have to be like, hey, we're doing something bigger. Like, the stakes of this are larger than what we've done before. It's bigger than just, oh, well, he's fighting 2 Hutts and all of that, and that's kind of the disappointment here. On the merits of it, beyond the marketing aspect of it, on the merits of this movie, I think the biggest problem that I encounter is that, you know, the term tonal whiplash gets thrown around a lot. The idea that like a movie can oscillate scene to scene, and it doesn't exactly, what's it called? We don't know when exactly the sorry, I read a headline at the same time. We don't know exactly what the what's it called? What the point, like, all the stuff with Road to the Hutt looks really silly, is what I'm trying to say. All the stuff with the Anzellans and Grogu gets really silly. And the issue with that is that it's like you're trying to build drama, but at the end of the day, if your protagonist is being rescued by 5 Muppets, it's very hard to build drama in a serious way. And when you have a Hutt ripped within an inch of his life, speaking with Jeremy Allen White's voice, it's very hard to take it seriously as a source of drama. And that's kind of fundamentally my issue with this movie. It's still 3 stars, because, like, the goofiness, like, as long as you just acknowledge that you're watching a movie, it's the goofiness is kind of fine. It's just, like, it doesn't fit with what they're trying to do. I mean, I think it's meant to be comedic, but there are too many digressions in this that I'm like, we spend so much time doing nonsense here that it's like, what are we doing? Like, at one point, Din gets dropped into a water, like a pit of water, and has to fight that giant dragon snake thing from the trailer, and it's like it's got poisonous fangs, so he gets bit and he gets poisoned and he passes out, so Grogu has to take care of him, which is a very long sequence in this movie. It felt like it was at least 20 minutes. Maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it felt longer than it was, but it goes on for a while. And needlessly so. There's very little there to justify the amount of runtime that this sequence gets. And that's, again, kind of a problem. We're spending a good amount of time just kind of wandering off and doing very little. And it's just like, what was the point of this? Again, in the TV show on Disney Plus, where I'm watching it without leaving my couch, that's more forgivable than, you know, going to a theater and watching it there. And it's because these are 2 different experiences. It got to the point where I'm like, can we just move this along, please? Where are we in regards to the end of this? And it's like, Zeb's there. Cool. If you haven't watched Rebels, fuck you. You don't know who Zeb is. He's there. They say his name like twice. So it's just, you have this giant guy who's there, and it's like, who is he? Who cares? And it's not even like, oh, he was in the show. You have to remember his appearance in The Mandalorian, and it's like, well, no, but I don't think they named him there either. But either way, it's like it was one small cameo in season 3. But we do have a bigger issue to talk about with this movie. And we'll talk about that after this.
If you want reviews like this every week, follow Beware of Spoilers on Spotify and check out everything we cover at mwpnews.com.
So the bigger issue to talk about with this movie is not anything related to this movie specifically, or related to how they released it, what the distribution strategy was, anything like that, which is what we spent a lot of time talking about so far. The bigger issue with this movie is narratively where it falls in the world of Star Wars in relation to what they're doing. And right now, we know that Star Wars is building towards Heir to the Empire, and it hasn't been called that yet. They never said explicitly this movie's going to be called Heir to the Empire, but considering what the movie is, it's Thrawn, it's the end of the Imperial remnants and the end of the Mandalorian, New Republic timeline, and all of that. It's gonna, Ahsoka's building to it, and we've been building to it up until this point. This movie is what's it called? This movie is going to be the Heir to the Empire movie, the end of Thrawn, and the defeat of that. We know it's directed by Dave Filoni, and I believe all the current cast members are expected to return. And the fundamental issue with this is, right now, as of today, there are two things that are either currently out or are coming soon that we know about that are building toward this story. And that is the movie that came out today, The Mandalorian and Grogu, that I just watched, and Ahsoka Season 2. And Thrawn is back in the main galaxy. And they've been building toward it. It's this thing the Shadow Council's talking about. Yeah, and when Thrawn gets here, shit's gonna get real. We gotta get things together. We're building toward this giant threat of Thrawn. But the issue is we have very little going on in the universe right now to be here's what's happening. And I think that this is kind of the big issue of what this big Disney Plus shift has done to Star Wars specifically, and how badly Disney Plus has damaged the brand. Because the issue is, Star Wars managed to survive lean years before. They managed to survive the early 2000s, during the prequel era where the movies weren't very good, by having a ton of expanded media. The period between the prequels and the sequel trilogy, Star Wars was still something people talked about because there were constantly games, constantly movies, Rebels and Clone Wars, and there were tons of books, and there was constantly shit coming out. The period between the end of the original trilogy and the prequels, constantly books coming out, and there's just something you can always do to engage with this franchise in a meaningful way. We don't have that anymore, and one of the big promises of the Disney acquisition and the tossing of the old canon was that we're going to have this cohesive narrative. The story group's going to work, and we're going to have this cohesive narrative. The problem with this is, right now, it seems like the story group is kind of apprehensive to do anything in any other media because they want to hold on to while they figure out what they're going to do theatrically and on streaming. Right now, we have no idea of what's going on. The Acolyte is done. We know there's not going to be any more Mandalorian unless it's theatrical, and based on how the early projections are for the box office, that's not definite anyway. We know that there's Starfighter, which is after Episode 9. We know there's a trilogy in development by Simon Kinberg. We know that Charmin Obaid-Chinoy is working on a new Jedi Order movie. We know that James Mangold is working on a Dawn of the Jedi movie. But right now, we're trying to wrap up this time period here, and there's really not a ton there. It's it's weird that we didn't get an announcement that the Heir to the Empire movie is going to be in 2028, in May of 2028. I haven't looked at the untitled release slate in a while, but we know this year is The Mandalorian and Grogu, obviously. Next year is obviously Starfighter. And we also know that Ahsoka has now been moved to 2027. It's going to be early 2027 from the upfronts. We found that out. So the question is, when are we going to get this movie? And at what point are we going to get this done? That's a big problem. That's kind of a massive problem that needs to be addressed here. Because if we don't have concrete movement on when this is going to be done, how this is going to be done, and all of that, people aren't going to care by the time that movie comes out. Because, like, if next year is Ahsoka, let's say March, we get Ahsoka of next year. Probably not, because they're not going to... Let's say January, February, because they're going to want to wrap up before Daredevil Season 3. We've learned this from how Disney's operating recently. They don't want to have people watching at the same time, having two shows coming out at the same time. They'll do animated and live action, but they don't want two live action competing with each other. Because it skews the metrics. They eventually even out, but in the short term, it skews the metrics. And the issue with this is, it's like, okay, so we have, Ahsoka comes out in March, or in January, it's wrapped up by March, or it comes out in February, wrapped up by March, or it comes out after, and like, let's say the latest it's wrapped up by June. The show is done by June of 2027. If there's nothing else happening, if there is no Mandalorian Season 2, if there is, Mandalorian and Grogu 2, if there is no, if there is no, the Rangers of the New Republic is not happening because of Gina Carano, if we're not getting, any of this other stuff, the longer you put off Heir to the Empire, the less people are going to be interested in it. You need to give something, and unless they're like, this is going to come out and it's going to do so well that we were planning to have the Mandalorian and Grogu 2, as the next movie, it's like, I don't know. Like, it's just kind of an odd situation they find themselves in now. And it feels entirely self-inflicted. And that's kind of a big problem. You should have worked on, scheduling out the release slate better. And that was kind of a big... It's kind of a big clusterfuck, the way that they have this going now. And I think fundamentally, like, if people are going to reflect poorly on Kathleen Kennedy for her decision-making, I think we got to start reflecting poorly on Dave Filoni. Because here's the thing, Dave Filoni took over in time for Star Wars Celebration. Unless, and again, this is me saying this now, unless we were going to get to, D23, and that's when they're going to come out and announce all this cool stuff, which is possible. Like, if he comes out of D23 and is like, hey, we're doing this, we're wrapping it up, I think what we need is some kind of, like, guidance as to where we're going. And realistically, after watching this, like, I don't know necessarily if Ahsoka can get all the narrative groundwork done to get us to the point that we're gonna feel like we've gotten this done. Because there's a lot that needs to be done. And a show like Rangers of the New Republic, which is no longer going to happen, or The Mandalorian, would have given us the groundwork to do that. And when we heard Favreau talk about what the original plan for Season 4 was, where it was going to feature Thrawn and all of that, it felt more like it was laying that groundwork. What needs to be done is the coalescence of the Empire. They need to coalesce power around Thrawn and then have Thrawn be this, this force. To do that. And I don't know if Ahsoka is going to have the space to do that. Unless, of course, the reason why Ahsoka has been delayed is because they need to make room for that storyline to fit in there, which is possible. Where originally it wasn't going to be doing that heavy lifting. But now that they've gotten rid of Rangers of the New Republic and, we're doing this, it now has to do that. Maybe that's why the show has been delayed as often as it has, where it was supposed to come out like last year and now this year and now it's coming next year. Maybe that's the case. But I can't think of anything else that would lead to that. And if that's the case, then hopefully we get the announcement at D23 or at Comic-Con or something this year that's like, hey, we have the Heir to the Empire movie. We're going to give it an official title. You've been calling it the Heir to the Empire movie. Maybe we'll just call it Heir to the Empire. Who knows? But we're slating that for May of 2028 or December of 2028. I mean, And look, here's the thing, too. I think the other thing that really needs to be taken into consideration is that this movie was expensive. Like, at $160 million, that's a lot of money to have to recoup. And unfortunately, I mean, they might make it back. Who knows? And you know, the armchair people who are like, oh, Disney ruined Star Wars, are going to be like, oh, they didn't make it back. But, like, I don't know. And this movie is not entirely divorced from, like, the same criticisms I had of The Force Awakens, where it's like, yes, it like, The Force Awakens does kind of retread the plot of A New Hope almost one-to-one. Not exactly one-to-one, but close enough to one-to-one. But this movie features the greatest hits of things that you like. It's like you have, like, you know, like, the Hutts are here, and, you know, all of that, and it's just like, is, you know, oh, he gets captured and gets dropped into a Rancor pit, but it's not a Rancor pit because there's a giant snake in there and it's in water, and it's kind of different, but kind of a mix of the Rancor pit and the trash compactor. Oh, you guys like Thor Ragnarok, right? Well, here's a scene in an arena, and they got to fight each other there, and it's fine. But, like, the fact of the matter is, like, this movie needed to do more to lay groundwork, and it didn't do enough of that. As a standalone experience, it's fine. It's entertaining. You'll have a good enough time watching it. It's not offensively bad. Like, that's the thing, is that it's like, there have been enough really bad Star Wars movies that we can't say this is, you know, the worst or anything like that. It's just, clearly they don't know what to do with this franchise, and I think that comes from the fact that, like, they haven't really tried anything recently. Like, you gotta make some big swings, and they just aren't doing that. But yeah, we'll wrap up there for today. Our next episode will be, I don't know, Jojo will be back soon. Until then, have a great rest of your week.
Before you go, I also write fiction. My newest novel, Succession Planning, is out on August 28th, available both in paperback and in ebook. It follows a journalism grad stuck managing a store while the owners wage a quiet war over who takes over the business. It's about ambition, inertia, and taking the easiest choice. The link is in the description. That's Succession Planning, out on August 28th.